Every caucus cycle is really unique because of the circumstances, whatever's happening in the entire country, whatever's happening in the entire world, and of course the field of presidential candidates. So you always have unique aspects. But the 2012 cycle was even more unique because almost every single person who ran was a front runner at some point. And there were some people who didn't run who were still front runners. So it really was chaos. That's why we called the book Caucus Chaos, because I felt chaos really summed up the feeling of the whole experience.
Do you know what the tax rate would have to be able to honor the promises of Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid if we just raise taxes and leave the programs as they are? Right now, those programs combined take a payroll tax out of your earnings of 15.3%. That would have to rise to 44%.
Sir,
we're not going to do that. And so, I'm glad you're on Social Security. Hold on just a moment. Hold on just a moment. Hold on just a moment. You know what? I get a chance. I can let you speak in a moment.
You came here to listen to the people.
No, I came here to speak, and you'll get to ask a question. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. I'll let you speak. Hold on a second. Let me speak. Hold on a second.
Social Security for the future. Two-thirds of my income, my wife's income comes from Social Security.
Iowa has never seen a caucus cycle like we saw in 2012, but this isn't meant to be a history book. This went through the rise and fall of every candidate so we understand what happened, but more importantly, why it happened. Pick somebody like Michelle Bachmann. Michelle Bachmann, to her credit, was a credible, serious contender for the presidency, at least for the Republican nomination for a while, which in this state is no little thing. Iowa is one of 2 states in the country to never send a woman to the governor's mansion or to Congress. Mississippi is the other one. It's tough turf here for a woman to try to accomplish something like that. And for a while, she looked like she could be the first one to do it.
With 16,892 Iowans voting, the winner of the 2011 Iowa straw poll is Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann.
In the end, what it probably did was kill that straw poll forever, because she had such an incredible collapse afterwards as people started to focus more on what she said and the way she ran a campaign. She really just imploded. It's one of the biggest collapses in the history of the caucuses.
And so last night, the people of Iowa spoke with a very clear voice. And so I have decided to stand aside. And I believe that if we are going to repeal Obamacare, turn our country around and take back our country, we must do so united. And I believe that we must rally around the person that our country and our party and our people select to be that standard bearer.
Rick Perry, somebody who had a lesson in his own way. He got into the race late, and instead of really working it like Rick Santorum did all over the state, Rick Perry decided to spend a lot of his time outside of the state. Iowa doesn't have a lot of super rich billionaires who can form their own super PAC and help you through an election. So Rick Perry, and we talked about this in the book, he chose to spend a lot of his time outside Iowa and fundraise. So he treated this like a general election or even a primary campaign, and that doesn't work here. So he didn't get in all the coffee shops and the church basements and really work over people one-on-one. Now he seems very serious about 2016. I don't think he'll make the same mistake. I think you'll see him, and you've already seen it. He's come to Iowa already, and he's getting more involved in these local dinners where you can really get out and meet people. That's his lasting impact and his lasting lesson for people, is you really have to get out here and work it. If you look at Newt Gingrich, he was also a front runner for a while. People already knew him, but he ran a different kind of campaign. People who did not like him said his campaign was more about promoting his last book or his last movie or his wife's latest book. They just traveled this state a lot differently. They didn't raise much money, which people didn't like. They didn't spend a lot of time here, which people didn't like. The whole 3-marriage thing, that didn't go over well with the social conservatives. So he had his moment, then he was gone, much like everybody else. Ron Paul was one you could argue had a longer shelf life and legacy than anybody here, though, because he ran in 08, he ran again in 2012. He was the only guy who greatly raised his profile and raised his support from 08 to 12. He more than doubled his support. So he his people got organized, and he found a way to get people engaged in a way that they had never in their lives. These are people who didn't normally vote in some cases. He had really young people showed up at his events.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And I think you might recognize my wife. Her picture is on that cookbook. Anybody see that cookbook this year? Well, thank you very much. What a delightful crowd. And, you know, sometimes they say, boy, that was a good speech. I said, no, that was a good crowd. that makes all the difference in the world.
So he laid that groundwork. For a while, his libertarian followers took over the state party infrastructure, so they made their mark like that. Now, in the end, people didn't like that, the establishment, and they kicked those people out. But at least for a while, he did. Rick Santorum will be like the little engine that could. He came here, nobody knew who the heck he was. He went to events where literally 1 or 2 people would go to at the beginning. But the thing Rick Santorum accomplished in that amount of time was he got his screw-ups out of the way. He got his screw-ups out of the way when all these cameras weren't around him. So he got his sound bites, his answers ready and perfected on everything. And even when people didn't agree with him, he had good philosophical debates back and forth. He knew what to say to people, and he knew how to get his point across. And so as Iowans gave up on all those other candidates, Santorum was the last man standing and had this unprecedented surge the final week of the campaign.
Thank you. Game on.
His legacy is that he showed that if you work your butt off, Iowans will give you the benefit of the doubt, and if you're still in the game at the end and they've kicked everybody out, they trust you, they've met you numerous times, and in the end they'll support you. Almost everybody at some point had been built up to a point, and then whether it was that candidate's fault or whether there was some choices maybe that the campaign made, everybody always plummeted down, with the exception of Mitt Romney. He was sort of steady as you go the entire caucus cycle. He really had the same amount of support in 2012 as he did back in 2008, but that wasn't necessarily a good thing.
I'm running for people of the nation, all the people of the nation, not just a few, but for everybody, including you. Care very deeply about all of our citizens. All my best to you. You take care. All right, thank you. All right.
The caucuses are a unique event, some would say almost a spectacle. You have about 2.25 million people, registered voters in the state of Iowa. But to put it in perspective, in 2012, when there was so much attention on this, only about 122,000 people on the Republican side actually took part in the caucus. So you're talking about a very narrow but super passionate group of people who show up on a caucus night. And it's so different than a primary. That's why it's so unique. So you're talking about an event where everybody has to go somewhere. It's usually around 7 o'clock, and you have to give about an hour or 2 hours of your time. It's 1:30 in the morning. Everybody's waiting to see how this back and forth caucus night was going to go. And if you remember, there were actually 3 people involved at that night: Ron Paul, Rick Santorum, and Mitt Romney. For a while, it looked like anybody could win. As the night wore on, we could tell Ron Paul wasn't. So you had a 2-man battle here. 1:30 in the morning, Matt Strawn, who was the chairman of the Iowa Republican Party at the time, stood up and announced that Mitt Romney was the winner. He had been warned beforehand, hey, this could be really, really close, and what we see on caucus night may not be the way the votes end up, because they have this certification process that in most years nobody cares about. We had chaos leading up through the whole cycle. We had super chaos on caucus night itself, but then you had even more chaos in the weeks that followed when they actually figured out who it was who won. So there are about 1,700 precincts across the state of Iowa. That's how it's divided. So they had to go back to those folks, certify the results. This is where things got messy, because they never counted 8 precincts for whatever reason. Somehow there was a huge breakdown. So all of these volunteers statewide that collected this information, they were supposed to turn it over to the state. There's discrepancy about whether they did turn it over or they didn't. The party said they never got the results. Some of those people said, I don't know why you didn't, we gave it to you. So that, to this day, and probably forever, will not be solved. So those 8 precincts, people who voted in those 8 precincts, will never be counted. So that 2-week process while they went through to certify things, in the end it showed that Rick Santorum was up by 34. He didn't lose to Mitt Romney by 8 votes. But Matt Strawn, for whatever reason, was hesitant to call Rick Santorum the winner. So that just escalated all the tensions. And we get into this, into the book, Caucus Chaos, where Rick Santorum had a shouting match with Chairman Matt Strawn about how this was all going down.
Yeah, we don't know what the final vote tally is going to be, but congratulations to Rick Santorum. This has been a great victory for him and for his effort. He's worked very hard in Iowa. We also feel it's been a great victory for us here, for Ron Paul as well. Ron Paul's had a great night.
Well, if you look at caucus night, just by the numbers, Strawn was right. By the numbers they had gathered, Romney did win by 8 votes. So he was technically correct at that point. The challenge for him is that because it was so close, the closest it has ever been in the history of the caucuses, that could change once they go through the certification process. So it took a couple of weeks, and then this is where the campaigns were fighting, because Strawn, after they went through the certification process, he and his staff were essentially saying it was a tie, and that infuriated the Santorum people, because they're saying, wait a minute, when it was an 8-vote margin and Romney was up, you said Mitt Romney was the winner. Now that you've gone through the process to count the votes you could actually find, because they seem to have lost 8 precincts throughout the state somehow, and it showed that Santorum was up by 34 votes, you're saying it's basically a tie. How the heck can that be? If we're up by 34, we win. So there's a state central committee that got involved behind the scenes. That's a very small group of people, and they essentially forced Strawn. They had several versions of this news release they were going to send out late on a Friday night, but eventually they agreed on one where Strawn finally said, yes, Santorum's the winner. But by then, it didn't really matter much.
All right, well, thanks for coming out this afternoon. First things first, there's a couple things that need to be cleared up. In trying to explain in great detail the caucus certification process, I think there was a misunderstanding regarding the certified results. One thing that is irrefutable is that in the 1,766 certified precincts that the Republican Party was able to certify and report, Rick Santorum was the winner of the certified precinct vote total by 34 votes.
The way it all went down with Matt Strawn is frankly a mystery with some people. He was the chairman of the state party. He had big ambitions. People assumed he was going to run for the U.S. Senate, and he was going to use this state party chairmanship as a launch for this. So everybody would get to know him. He was all over the state media. He was all over the national media. But people have far different views about how the way this all went down. He's supposed to, at least in this state, they're supposed to remain neutral, and Strawn always said he would remain neutral. But the Santorum folks, and especially some of the social conservative folks, did not believe that at the end of the day Matt Strawn was neutral. They felt like he wanted Mitt Romney to win all along, and they think that when push came to shove on caucus night, when it was so razor thin, that 8-vote margin at that moment, they felt like what he should have done is stood up before the country at 1:30 in the morning when they finally had the votes counted and said, this is unprecedented. It's the closest we've ever had. There are only 8 votes between Mitt Romney and Rick Santorum. We now have a certification process. We go through and make sure everything was counted. It's a 14-day process according to the rules, and we'll know, but it's an unbelievable night. More people voted than ever before. He didn't do that because he stuck his neck out and said Mitt Romney won. He sort of hung himself, really, his reputation at least, before a lot of people, because they just couldn't fathom how he could do that when he knew that there was a chance that Mitt Romney didn't win. And so once they went through the certification, it proved that Romney did not win. And it really damaged Strawn's reputation permanently in some people's eyes. But when that U.S. Senate race came, that high-profile race, Matt Strawn was not a candidate. And there are people in this state that'll point to that one night on caucus night that destroyed Strawn's chances of becoming a U.S. Senator. After the caucus night debacle, and he was eventually forced to declare Rick Santorum the winner a couple weeks later, he eventually resigned under pressure from the state party, which people felt like he had to do. I mean, it just doesn't look good to people where at the end of the day you never found 8 precincts. So 8 of 1,700 precincts from that caucus night were never counted because they just sort of disappeared. So that's tough for people to take, and you wonder, well, what the heck did I vote for? So they know that they had to figure out, okay, this was a big black eye, and we have to heal this and we have to move on.
Thank you all. Very good. Thanks, everybody.
You guys did a good job.
Now, if Rick Santorum would have won Iowa, would he become the Republican nominee? Would he have become the President of the United States? You know, it takes many steps to get to that point. But there's no doubt that it at least hurt Santorum momentum-wise. If he could have come out of here, been able to find the huge upset over Romney, he at least gets that moment in the spotlight, leading him on to New Hampshire and the rest of the way. Maybe he doesn't win New Hampshire, but it just makes him at least more of a player for a while. There were long-term implications, even longer term than that election. Romney himself had to reach out through the general election to kind of repair the feelings with the rest of the state. He was never super popular here. His popularity really was about the same as it was in 08, just kind of steady across. 1 in 4 Republicans or so supported him in the 08 caucuses and in the 12 caucuses. But longer term, the party had to do some serious damage control. So they had to get out front, work with the other states and the infrastructure of the other states to make sure Iowa could remain first in 2016. But frankly, they just really had to work to change the rules.
I said our overarching goal was 2 things. 1, to make sure the certified vote results accurately reflect how Iowans voted on caucus night. But 2, also the understanding here in Iowa that, you know, our team here, we are temporary caretakers of the first in the nation status and the Iowa caucuses, so we need to make sure people will have confidence in the results that are reported.
So the certification process is greatly changed. No more 2-week thing. They want numbers that night or the next morning if it's super close. So that is something they immediately took care of. Bigger picture, though, there were huge changes after this happened, though, because the moderates, the establishments, if you will, they looked at these results. They looked at 2008 when Mike Huckabee, the former governor of Arkansas, won the caucuses. Then in 2012 when Rick Santorum won. They're the social conservative wing of the party. That wing hasn't necessarily grown, but it's definitely grown more organized over the years. So the establishment types, the moderates, were thinking that might not be a good reflection on the state of Iowa. So as they're looking ahead to 2016, they want this landscape here to be hospitable to somebody like Chris Christie, to somebody like Jeb Bush, Paul Ryan to a certain degree. They want the playing field open to everybody, so they want to be more accommodating. And frankly, the party has gone through numerous changes since then. After 2012, after Matt Strawn was forced out, A.J. Spiker took over. He was one of the higher-ups for Ron Paul's campaign, that libertarian wing. They almost overthrew the infrastructure and the libertarians took over. They didn't have a lot of fundraising success, so then there was another coup. So short-term, a social conservative former state legislator, Danny Carroll, was put in charge. Establishment didn't like that either, so they had another coup, so now he's out. So now they're going back to a more establishment type leader as they try to look both in the state and beyond about the reputation of the caucuses so that it's more agreeable, more hospitable to all kinds of candidates. For the Democrats, the challenge would be you've had Barack Obama in office 8 years. The economy is still not where people want. If you look at the polls, Barack Obama is not particularly strong nationwide or in the state of Iowa. And it might be especially significant in this state because this is really where it all started for him. I mean, he came almost out of nowhere in 08. Remember, it was all about Hillary Clinton in 08 and John Edwards to a lesser degree. But Obama came in here, organized like crazy, and won, and kept that incredible infrastructure together to help him win in 2012. But now as people start to look at how he has governed the country over these years, and it doesn't matter really who's in charge, you always get a little bit of fatigue here. So Republicans, as they fight amongst themselves about what a Republican even is, there will be a challenge for Democrats to try to get people as motivated as they were last time. As we stand here, the biggest name everyone's expecting to get in the race, of course, is Hillary Clinton. And while there are people excited about that, you have some Democrats who liked the newness, the uniqueness of what Barack Obama brought in 08. Hillary Clinton's not a new name, obviously. So things that came up in her past are going to come up again. And will there really be a spirited Democratic race here? Or will it be Hillary Clinton and maybe one or two lesser knowns who want to fight the good fight, but in the end can't do it. So that could be a disadvantage for Democrats, that they won't get that really spirited primary debate. Republicans on the other side, they're having their own, they don't like it when you use the term civil war, but they have that own battle going. We've seen it in the statewide elections here. So will that be ugly and nasty? Or will it be a way to drive up the intensity where in the end it just puts so much more focus on a presidential campaign here, then they find a way to unite and surge after that into a 2016 general election? That definitely remains to be seen. Overall, there's no doubt there will be much more scrutiny in 2016 than there was on the past because of the way 2012 went down. I mean, the high profile moment for the state, and they screwed it up, and they know that. You can't get the winner wrong. And so they put some checks and balances to try to make sure that never happens again. But they also, beyond that, beyond the reputation of it, they just want to make sure in some people's minds that a candidate, no matter where he or she is on the political spectrum when it comes to Republicans, can feel like he or she has a chance to win here. And that can be really important because they don't want to be thought of as just a narrow wedge social right state, when big picture they're not. It's a very purple state altogether, and it has been historically. It's almost evenly divided between Republicans, Democrats, and independents. That's why this state gets the recognition it does. It picks very different types of leaders, and it's just like a pendulum that swings back and forth. It is the epitome of a swing state. And if you go through the history books, history shows that it's been that way, and there's no reason to believe it won't stay that way.